I present to you the hottest women on internet talk show. Isis, Brenda, Miranda, Bendu, and Irene.
Get it? In the kitchen, at the beauty salon, over the fence, and during brunch. Right here, right now. This is Our Voices. The hottest internet talk show where women, and I'm talking about these ladies, they get super vocal. But today's topic is not gonna be like any other we've had here on the show before. We've had a few laughs, we've had some really challenging topics and conversations, but none of which is as sensitive as today's topic. Today we're gonna be discussing rape. Rape has been a serious topic here in the United States and even overseas. The unfortunate part is that it's not just happening in communities where those who are uneducated. It's happening in a lot of societies and in communities where people are considered civilized. In our higher education institutions like colleges and universities, there's been a huge epidemic where women have complained a number of times of being raped, not by strangers, but by classmates, people they actually know. The problem is, why is this an ongoing situation? And what is happening in our educational institutions where these complaints are being brought up and nothing's being done to address it? So today's topic, we're going to discuss the rape culture on college campuses. As you can tell, I'm actually very emotionally choked up over this. I am someone who has been raped by someone who I thought was a friend of mine. And we actually took classes together. He was a football player. And he raped me on Father's Day after church. And I've suppressed the feeling for a long time. And I never told my father when my mother came to the hospital to come and get me. And it was the most horrible experience ever because I knew him. So, what I want is to be able to open up a topic that's seldomly discussed, but has a lot of weight and power that can be taken care of if we would just leave it open for discussion. So, I'll start with my most recent college grad, Miranda. Please. You've probably been, I'm sure that all of us have just recently had an experience with graduating from college. What has the culture been like there that you can last remember when it's come to that discussion of rape on campuses?
Well, I graduated from Seattle University, and it's a Catholic university. So the topic of sexual harassment and sexual abuse is something that is talked about on the campuses, but it's not a very large aspect of it, and as such the men there are subjugated to the overall rape culture in the United States, where they think that no means yes, and if you fight them off then you're just playing hard to get. And it's very similar because it's not anything what you went through until I was after college, got out of college, but I was stalked by one of my friends my freshman year in college because he thought that I liked him and thought that if he saw what I did around the campus that he'd be able to get to know me better. And it was just a very weird feeling when he told me that he was stalking me, and I felt violated, and if by my friend, even if he hadn't touched me in any way. And it's this feeling of not having your own agency in this very private and intimate moment that you're supposed to have with people you love, and they take that away from you. And that's what rape culture is this stripping women and some men of their agency and trying to dominate people, because with rape, it's not about sex, it's about power. It's about having power over people, and that's what these young men think sex is dominance and, you know, asserting themselves over women and asserting themselves over their friends and their classmates, and it's a very, you know, terrible experience. So that's what, you know, that's what rape culture is this, you know, this perception that anything a woman does, she can get raped because of it.
So interesting. We've already given it a name. We've given it a culture. It lets you know how this is becoming widespread. It's been years since I had been in college, and I didn't think we even called it rape culture. In fact, we really even wanted to speak of it as rape. You know, I can't imagine what transitions have happened between 10 years ago plus when I was undergrad and what you're defining it as present terms. But if I had to dig even further, you know, ladies, you both have, Linda and Irene, have children. One of your sons is on his way to college. Has this been an open discussion as far as, you know, what could be or what is happening on college campuses revolving around relationships between men and women?
My son still has one more year of high school, and we haven't spoke of this. I haven't spoke of this to him, but I don't have any idea about this because this has never happened to me. But my mother was raped, and I'm a product of that rape. I'm a rape baby, and that was really hard for me growing up. So I could only imagine what it's like to be raped.
Yeah.
And my mother couldn't ever love me because I looked like him and not like her in her eyes.
How old was your mother?
My mother was 19, and it was because she was on her way to school, and so she was going off to school 6:30 in the morning, and she was wearing a mini skirt. So she asked for it.
Mm.
And that's such a gross thing to tell a woman, is that she asked for it because of what she's wearing, and that makes me so angry, because when I was sexually assaulted, I was in my bed at home, and my brother let these guys, for some reason, stay at our house that night, and I had the audacity to keep my door unlocked, and this guy went into my bed and basically was fingering me, and I woke up to somebody fingering me, and it was the grossest, it was the most, I forgot his face and I've forgotten his name, but I can't forget what he did to me, and it was so disgusting, and I felt so disgusted with myself. And the thing that always gets me is when I told my dad about it, he said, well, why didn't you lock your door? He didn't even say that he was sorry that this had happened. He said, why didn't you lock your door? He was blaming me for this guy's disgusting actions. So when someone says that a woman asked for it, I just want to slap them in the face, because how could a woman ever ask for something that a man did to her? Mm-hmm. And it's just so, it's gross. I just don't understand why so many people treat women with such disrespect, that they think that it's okay for them to be raped because of what they were wearing. Like a mini skirt, like literally, it's just like that. It's like, it's not even showing. Oh,
what does it mean to you when you hear the word rape culture, Bindu? I mean, you come from you were born in a different country and then came here to the United States. Is this something that's communicated back home, or can you see a distinct difference between being here in the U.S. and your home country?
I see a distinct difference for the fact that I've never been raped before in my life. But I know my freshman year in college, they have these parties where it's like the seniors or the upper class people are having parties for the incoming freshmen. And they intentionally give them a lot of booze and stuff like that just to get them drunk or whatever. Luckily for me, you know, even though I drank a beer, but it was my first time drinking any kind of alcohol in my entire life. was my freshman year in college. But the beer was so bitter that I didn't drink it again. But that was the whole motive. How many guys were going to sleep with, these incoming freshmen, because it was a thing, for them to have these incoming freshmen. So, and I just kind of compare it to what I hear sometimes these parties, these fraternity parties, they have drugs, they have, a whole lot of drugs and stuff like that. The idea to me is actually getting a lot of these girls drunk, and sometimes there is group rape. That is so horrible to have this group rape. And what I think that some of the universities, they need to have a little more control when they have these frat parties or any kind of party on campus. I think that will kind of minimize that, have campus security, everything there. But it is a horrible situation. And I sympathize with each and every one of you. I cannot even consider myself lucky, because if it happens to one woman, that's not good at all.
Linda, I know you have children, and I know they're not in college yet, but maybe soon, one day. Would this be a discussion you feel you could even have with your kids about rape culture, and what does it actually mean to you if you had decided to have this conversation with them?
I think it's a necessity to have this conversation. This shouldn't be a hush-hush situation. Rape is a horrible thing. It happens every day to women, children, men, little boys. It's something that can't be swept under the rug. And if your child is informed what rape is, and to not be afraid to say, no, don't touch me, or report somebody that's harassing them. That's an important thing, because some kids feel ashamed. Well, I need to be quiet. I don't want anybody to know. I don't want my mom, my dad to know, or my teachers, But if these kids are taught at a young age, what is expected of them, you know what I mean? And how a child can, if they are approached in a certain way, there's so many pedophiles out there, and there's, older kids, like my brother's friend, when I was younger, I was just 18, and I stayed the night at their house, and my brother invited his friend over, and I knew this person, and he was, a family friend, and I was not raped, but I could have been, because I was sleeping, and you have somebody coming up to you, touching you in your sleep. I mean, I wasn't sexually experienced at that age. But I didn't really know what to do. And you freeze, because you don't understand what's happening here. But thank God, my sister-in-law was in the same bed with me, and she woke up and told them to leave. But for some reason, it's like something comes over you where you can't yell out, or you can't, you can't move, because it's like you're frightened.
Yeah.
It's just like a fright that it's so weird to explain. I mean, I probably put myself in a situation, when I was in my early 20s, drinking with my friends. I'm sure I probably could have had that situation happen to me, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But thank God that it didn't, but it makes you more aware of what's really out there. Absolutely. And it just for that experience, it makes you stronger, because you know that you can stand up and say, this isn't right. Even though at that moment I wasn't able to, but it makes you stronger. You know what I mean? Through the years, with my children, what I'll tell them, don't be afraid. Women have a voice, and it needs to be heard. If you're afraid, let somebody know you're afraid. If something's not right, let them know it's not right.
This is what rape culture means to me. Be quite honest with you, it can happen to a male, it can happen to a female. It doesn't matter what your gender is. Rape is when someone is trying to impose themselves on you sexually and you already have let them know you're disinterested and they still impose upon you despite your interest. I know men who have been sexually assaulted by other men and they've told them, I'm not interested, I'm not gay, and yet it was still imposed upon them. I had other friends who were females as well who have been in situations where they said no repeatedly, and yet the guy continued to impose himself upon this woman. And it's been just the same with women who have gone a number of times trying to pursue a guy, and the guy says no. Now maybe she doesn't have the physical strength to hold him down and force herself upon him, but no means no. And it's all considered rape, whether there's penetration or not. When you are forcing yourself on someone sexually and they're saying no, or even if you don't feel it's forced, if you feel like you're trying to seduce them and they're still saying no, get a clue. That's the bottom line. Stop. It's not worth the consequences of what's going to happen to you or to them. For a long time, I kept this to myself. The only one who really knew was my mother, because she was there to come pick me up at the hospital, and the police report that I filed. Tell someone. If you make sure you tell the other person, I'm not interested, and they still force themselves, let authorities know. Because the moment you stay silent, you have ruined it for all the rest of us. You have to report it. And that is the problem that's happening on a lot of college campuses. Some of these ladies and men are not reporting it. What we're seeing in statistics are those who actually did report it. Imagine the number of people who have not, and how that number is even increasing as far as people who are being raped, because we don't even know about those who are not reporting it. If you speak, you're doing us all a service. If you don't say anything, it's a disservice to all of us. And for those of you men and women who think you have power over someone else by doing something against their will, like sexually assaulting them, excuse me, fuck you. You're the one who's just been fucked, because you have to deal with this with your conscience later on. They can at least at some point say, you know what, God, please forgive me, or you know what, maybe I'll make sure I'm more consciously aware of the choices of people I hang out with. The unfortunate part is, a lot of times these rapes are happening to those of us who are family members, who are friends. How can you distinguish between the difference between someone who's good and who's not, who's related to you and who's not, and knowing whether or not they're going to rape you? The best thing I could suggest, based on my own situation, is put yourself out of compromising positions. If there's any hint whatsoever that this person is stepping out of line, not only do you say no, but you tell them, get the fuck out now. So a lot of these college institutions are actually becoming very quiet and silent and putting a lid on the fact that there are people who are reporting rape, and they don't want it to leak out to the rest of the public for various reasons. It could be for the simple reason that maybe their athlete is the star athlete and they don't want to risk losing this athlete because of money that's coming into the institution. Or perhaps there's donors who are alumni from this institution and that's their child who's been accused of rape, and they don't want to lose that extra money coming in from those particular alumni as donors. So do we then roll over and pretend like we don't see it? Do we let the people who are calling, you know, that someone has raped them fall on deaf ears? Or do we stand up and make sure that we address the situation right away? Because let me tell you, that money will be spent, but that person who's been raped will be scarred. The money will be spent, but that person will be scarred for a very long time. And for all you college institutions that are out there that are compromising the mental well-being of those who are graduating from your school or attending your school just so you can get, what, a couple of pennies on a dollar? Is it actually worth it?
No.
Is it worth it? Interesting enough, to some colleges and some universities that are out there, it's worth it to them. For many of you who are watching this right now and you know who you are, someone has told you they've been raped and you did nothing about it. And for those of you who have actually shared with someone you've been raped, you didn't scream it loud enough. That's why this is an epidemic and it's still happening. You are accountable for this problem.
I wouldn't say rape victims are accountable for the problem. Even if they don't scream, it's not. I also get really angry when people say that, because there are people deal with rape in very different ways. Some people get angry, like I did, and some people become quiet and depressed or have these different problems. You can't blame or accuse a rape victim of not screaming loud enough if they can't, if they are struck, if they're paralyzed by this very thing happening to them. And you know, eventually they may speak out about it, but you can't put anything on the rape victim. That's what I've learned at college and what I've learned outside of college. You can't put anything on the rape victim, because you can't ask somebody to act a certain way after this violent, disgusting act has happened to them. It's all on the person who raped them. It's all on the rapist. It is never on the rape victim. And that's what keeps going on in the media, is that's why this keeps happening, is because the epidemic, the media will look at the athlete, sure, but they'll always overanalyze the rape victim, always say, oh, what was she wearing, or how drunk was she, or how does she act? Is she flirty? Is she, quiet? Is she shy? They always will overanalyze these rape victims because they want you to think there's doubt that this happened, that, oh, this woman is like crying wolf. This woman is a liar. She's a seductress. She just wants something out of this guy. And that's how they lay it off the rapist.
But let me be clear. But can I be clear on something really quick, just so that it won't be misconstrued what I was saying? I'm not saying that a person who's been raped, that you have to yell, hey, I've been raped. That's not what I'm implying. What I'm saying is, if it has happened to you, you need to tell somebody, whether you tell them today, 24 hours, a week, 2 weeks later, because if you are silent, if you are mute and no one ever knows about it, then it's going to continue to happen. Bad things happen not because bad people are consistently doing it, it's because good people are not standing up for what they see is wrong. And that good person is also you, who's been the victim of the situation. You have to speak on it. You can't remain mute. Someone has to share their story. This is hard for me to tell my story. My mother's watching this, my stepdad, my family's watching this. I have people I worked with who are going to be seeing this show. And it's embarrassing sometimes for me to think that I was in that situation. But if I say nothing, if I say absolutely nothing, it will continue to grow like a snowball. And it's important for me to say something because you look at me and you don't think this woman has never been raped. She's never been in a situation like that before. She's educated. She's on a talk show. There's no possible way she's been a victim of something like that. And it happens. It happens to someone like me. It can happen to anybody, unless we speak up and we stop it in its tracks.
And the thing about it, if you speak about it today and nothing happened, keep on talking about it. Let their kids hear it in the future. Because the more you talk about it, that may just, other people may come up on that same person. And they say, you know what? 10 years ago, ABC person said that this person raped them and we did not believe it. Yeah, 5 more person, law enforcement will get involved. And the more people talk about these kind of situations, the more it gets documented and the more these people will be brought to justice. And that's the best thing to do.
Well, the statistics say that women on college campuses, only 1 out of 5 will be raped. And only 12% of those women will report it to the police. And that's not saying, that's saying only 12% are reporting it to police and they're not reporting it to the universities. They're like the campus police. So sometimes the universities don't even know the statistics of what their actual rapes are because they aren't being told or reported, because these people that are attending these colleges don't want everybody to know, yes, I'm the one that got raped at this school. Hi.
They're afraid. Well, yeah, because
it's not only being afraid, but it's being finger pointed and say you're that girl. But the sad part is there are these athletes out there, and some women will accuse these athletes of rape when they haven't even been raped. So my advice to these male athletes, keep it in your pants. While you're in school, keep it in your pants. I mean, you don't want to have a problem with somebody accusing you of rape if you never raped them. Right. Because these women that are calling wolf, you know, they're harming the women that have actually been traumatized, raped, you know, and it discredits these women that have actually gone through this experience, because people will say, oh, you're just making this up because, you know, so and so made it up about this other athlete. You know, they just group everybody in the same class and don't even think about it.
I wanted to share something because these are some things that are going to probably come up as ways to get around the situation. Bendu had mentioned that at some frat parties and even sorority parties, they'll engage in drugs and alcohol sometimes so that you can say, well, she said yes, she was good with it, she was okay with it. Being able to get someone to sleep with you by clouding their judgment on drugs and alcohol is not a yes. That is very manipulative, and it makes you even more of a criminal, because you could even be man enough to just come at her and see if you could seduce her with her charm. You had to drug her. And that is a problem. And so at all colleges and campuses where they have these type of parties where there's alcohol and drugs that are there, I actually put some of that accountability not just on the students, but on the institution. And the reason why is because these families have trusted having their children go to, I'm sorry, they're grown adults now, having these grown adults go to your school with the understanding that this was a school that's going to be indicative of what they think their child is going to come out as a really fine gentleman. And unfortunately, it doesn't always turn out the way. Because you have on a suit and tie and your hair is parted on the side doesn't mean that you are a fine gentleman. What it means is you know how to dress up well. What we're looking at is character. You know, and if you see your frat brother or your friend or one of your athletes that you've been hanging out with that's intoxicated, make sure that the company he's keeping, if it's another woman, that she's okay just as well as he is. You know, the other thing that we hear that happens all the time on college campuses is the following. Well, they were dating before, we saw them hanging out before, you know, she must have asked for it. Men, if you know you're in a position of power on your college campus, whether you're an athlete or you're on an academic decathlon, the debate team, whatever it may be, use sound judgment. If you know there's something that a woman may want from you, don't sleep with her right away. Get a chance to get to know her for a while. And that way you'll know whether she's interested in you or interested in your fame. And women, be quite honest with you, it's so funny. There's this comedian named Chris Rock, and I never forgot what he said. I'm sure you guys all know him. He mentioned if a police officer, or if you saw someone dressed in a police officer uniform and you came up to them and said, excuse me, officer, I saw someone over there who's actually beating up a kid. And the officer turned around and said, whoa, 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 or that person turned around and said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not an officer. Don't come tap me on the shoulder. What makes you think I can help this person? I'm not an officer. And the guy says, well, you're dressed like one. Big clue. If you don't want someone to sexually assault you, be attentive to how you carry yourself. I'm not saying for the least bit that if you're wearing high heels that a man should have the right to assault you. But what I am saying is if it's at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're walking the street on Sunset Boulevard without anyone else, you need to be careful because those things can happen. You have to protect yourself. You can't walk around carrying yourself like someone who's saying, as they always put, the media says, I asked for it. You probably didn't ask for it, but if you put yourself in a compromising position, you're really taking risk. Don't take risks that you can avoid. Don't take risks that are not, that you don't have to be in that situation. And that way, while we're working on this epidemic, you're also protecting yourself.
See, I hear that argument too, and it's just like, you're putting it on the victim, and it's like, this is how our society works. We tell women how not to be raped, and it's through their clothing or through self-defense classes. We don't teach our men to not rape. We don't say, don't rape to little boys. We don't say, don't rape to teenagers. We don't. My brothers never had that conversation with my dad. My cousins never had those conversations with my uncles. I had several conversations with my mom, with my aunts, with my grandma, all about how to protect myself from rape. my brothers never got a conversation from their father, or my cousins never got a conversation from their uncles telling them, you shouldn't rape. You should know when she says no, that it means no. She needs consent. Young men are not being told these things. So that's why these blurred lines, they think that, okay, well, she's kind of drunk and she's saying yes, so that means she has to be into it. Like, again, you're putting it on the woman. And it's like, sure, yeah, okay, she's dressed up at 3 o'clock in the morning, she's trying to get home. It doesn't matter why she's in that position or why she's dressed that way. Men should not be coming out to her to rape her, because again, it's always on the accuser. It is never on the rape victim.
No, you're right, they shouldn't. What I'm trying to say is you need to avoid circumstances that could put you in that situation. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we teach our women that constantly. Like, we constantly tell our women how to dress, how to behave, and how to defend themselves in those situations. But we don't tell our men how to, like, if the certain situation is like, she's saying she doesn't want to do it and you keep pushing her, we don't tell men, okay, you need to draw back. We don't teach our young men this, and we don't teach it in high school, and we don't teach it in college. We need to start teaching men and implementing programs where men understand consent, and they can understand, well, when she means no, she means no.
I agree with
you about that. I think that there should be like something in the high schools where they should have like a class, like in your health class, something where that's touched upon, where that's explained, because a lot of times these people, these young kids, they don't know. They just assume that if a woman or if a young girl's like looking all cute or whatever, that.
I'm going to go on the internet and learn how to teach my 3 sons about this now, because this is a topic that needs to be taught to our boys.
Very good. But you know something? I think you guys are underestimating these guys. They know that it is wrong. They know that these things are wrong, yet they do it. And some of the coaches are fully aware that these athletes are doing it, but yet they kind of keep it under the rug. Hey, if your top athlete is doing that and you have to go and win the cup or whatever, they kind of keep it under the rug. And these guys know they're not dumb. They're not dumb, they are very, very smart. They know they're touching a person, the person says no means no, but yet they do it.
She's absolutely right. That's why I said that there are women who still need to make sure that they are taking some accountability, some responsibility, making sure they're not put in situations that could be compromising, because it's not that these men don't know. They got into a university, they're not ignorant. Don't go gumping out on me. You're fully aware of what you're doing and whether it's right or wrong. And because there are men who are like this, that now makes women obviously have to be a little bit more defensive. You have to put yourself in a position where you're aware of your situation, your circumstances, and who you're keeping company with. That's what I'm talking about, Miranda, when I'm saying women need to be consciously aware of how they're carrying themselves and who they're around. Not because they shouldn't feel free to wear the kind of clothes that they want, but if you're in the wrong place and the wrong circumstances, the wrong things can happen, because there are men who will prey on women for whatever reason that there is. And there are women who will prey on men. I have girlfriends that I wouldn't call it necessarily friends, but acquaintances who will look at guys, size them up and down, be like, have to give me some of that. It's a premeditated thought. They haven't even had sex yet, but the thought is already there. And so you have to be aware of who you're keeping company with. So if you don't want to be in situations or circumstances that are going to yield poor results, keep your ass away from certain people. Be consciously aware of what's happening in your surrounding area. That's all I'm saying.
Oh no, I totally understand your point. My thing was just that we have to, start implementing to men at younger ages what consent is. So even necessarily those guys who know, since they were taught at a younger age, then maybe they won't necessarily do it, because they understand consent and they understand respect for women. And a lot of the men who do these things to women and men don't have respect for them. So if we teach respect and consent to our young men, then I feel like these statistics would drop.
So I guess the question is, are we saying that these men don't know what consent is? Do they not understand what no means, or when a woman says not interested?
That's the premise of rape culture, is because you're forcing yourself onto a woman because you think she wants it.
I thought they were doing it because they wanted it, regardless if she wanted it or not.
Well, those are two different kinds, but yeah, but there's a faction that thinks she wants it, even though she's saying no, because they've been taught their entire lives. Even as a young kid, you're taught, oh, she hits you, that means she likes you.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, if she says no, that must mean yes. She's gonna come around eventually. Like, you hear this all the time for little boys when they like a little girl. She's like, oh no, I don't want you, ew. And like the parents will tell them, like, oh no, she'll come around eventually. She'll like you. And that's where we get, like, they learn this at a very young age. So when they get older and, you know, they want sex with the woman and she's saying no, or she's hitting him, he's thinking, or not thinking, but subconsciously remembering all these times when his parents told him, like, oh, she likes you, she's just playing hard to get. So that's a certain faction of rape culture. The other rape culture is when men they're just pressing onto women because they have no respect for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not only those that have on the mini skirts that are ripped, it's the sweatsuits. I mean,
yeah, no, any
outfit, can be enticing to some men for them to go ahead and rip a lady.
Yeah,
but that's not right.
So, in short, rape culture can be defined in so many different ways. It could be from those who are doing it just for the sake of power. It could be for those who are doing it because they have a misunderstanding of what rape is. And it can also happen to those simply because of the fact that people are just mute and they're not saying no. And so therefore, the victim remains a victim because the person who's doing the raping had no idea that they were doing anything wrong because the person didn't speak up. So moving forward, make sure everyone has a voice and speak up.
Yeah.
So that's it for today's show. I appreciate you. In fact, all of us appreciate you listening to such a sensitive topic. And if you have any thoughts about what we discussed here on today's show regarding rape culture, not just in universities and higher institutions, but just in your communities, in your homes, feel free to go into our blog. You've heard our voices, and now we're very much interested in hearing yours. Thank you.